Welcome back to Tales Arcane, where we talk about D&D, TTRPGs, and fantasy storytelling. D&D combat can be a long and laborious affair, and the longer it drags on, the more the energy and excitement can drain from your table. In today's video, I'm going to give you 4 tips to speed up your D&D combat in a natural, unforced way. We're not going to be radically overhauling the core rules of D&D here. This is all about how you approach the design of your encounters. As always, before we jump in, massive shout out to everyone who backs me on Patreon, making this video and all my videos possible. When you join the Tales Arcane Patreon, you get access to more than 1,000 pages of my original content, adventures, encounters, homebrew settings, supplements, GM resources, Patreon-only videos, and the Tales Arcane Discord. If you do want to support me on Patreon, there's a link down below this video, but if you want to just stay here and support on YouTube, liking and subscribing to the channel is much appreciated. Now, let's talk about speeding up D&D combat. You cannot really control how long it takes for a player to get through their turn, but you can control how long it takes for you to get through yours as the GM. If you have a lot of monsters in the map, say a boss with a whole little army of minions, it's going to take a long time to get through the minions' turns if every time one of them has to move, you have to stop and think about what they're going to do. If you're preparing for a large combat encounter with a lot of enemies on the map, give some of those enemies, especially the lesser enemies, default pre-planned movesets. Let's say we've got a bugbear and a little gang of goblins. The bugbear is the main attraction. He's the boss that the player is going to be focusing on, and you can decide what he does in his turn on a turn-by-turn basis. But when it comes to the goblins, they are kind of the additional minions. They're not really the main threat here, and they're great candidates for something like a pre-planned moveset. So let's say there's 5 goblins, and most of them are melee fighters, and let's say one of them is an archer. That archer doesn't need to consider their move every turn, sizing up where the players are. Instead, you can keep it really simple. On that archer's turn, you always know the first thing they're going to do is seek cover. If they don't have cover, they're going to move towards cover as much as they can. Whether or not they get behind cover on their turn, they're going to move towards it. The second thing they're going to do is they're going to shoot whatever player is closest to them. And as a third kind of rule for this moveset, they try to put distance between themselves and the players. So if there's 2 areas of cover, let's say there's a wagon over here and a fallen tree over here, whatever one is furthest from the players, that's the one the goblin goes towards. So instead of having to size up the battle and make a decision for that goblin, you just know that when it comes to the archer's turn, the goblin archer is just going to look at the nearest area of cover that is farthest from the player, move towards that, and then take a ranged attack against whatever player is closest to them. And it just kind of brings down the amount of work you have to do on that turn, speeds it up, and also creates the sense of immersion for the players, because the more you stop and hum and haw during the monster's turn, the more obvious it is, the more the players are reminded of the fact that these goblins are just manifestations of the GM. They know that, of course, but if the goblin decisively moves on its turn as if it was always planning to do this, and hurries over, takes up a position behind a tree, and then starts shooting one of the players will feel that the goblin has a degree of agency that it wouldn't otherwise. Another example of a pre-made moveset could be, for example, with some of the melee fighters on the map, they always attack whoever most recently attacked the boss, because that's who they're kind of defending. And the thing is that, although, yes, in a way you're almost making it more formulaic, you're taking away agency from these characters because you're giving them pre-planned moves, because those moves are always based off of what the players are doing. For example, which player is closest, where have they moved in the last turn, that defines where that archer is going to move to, who attacked the boss most recently, who attacked the bugbear, well, that defines what that melee fighter is going to do. So although you have limited how much you have to make decisions as a GM, for the players they're getting a sense that the goblins are still responding to what they're doing, so it never really feels formulaic. Another option is to build mechanic into your monster, which means that as it loses more HP, it starts to die faster, it starts to become more vulnerable. So for example, a dragon which can fly is often a very challenging encounter for players where the ranged attackers aren't particularly powerful. If you've got a party where the big heavy hitters are all melee fighters, then a dragon flying high above the party, raining down fire, flying into attack, and then flying away, that's going to be a very challenging battle. But Perhaps when the dragon's HP is reduced by 2/3, its wings have become so damaged that it can no longer fly, and at that point it drops to the ground and has to fight the players on the ground. At which point the barbarian and the fighter can wail in there, everyone dogpiles the dragon, and the final part of its HP dropping down happens a lot faster because that big defensive mechanism which was kind of prolonging the battle, the wings, are suddenly removed. Another way to do this is with armor and AC. Let's imagine that your players are fighting a fire giant, and the fire giant has an AC of 18 based on its plate armor. The players can wail on it, trying to just take down its HP, but perhaps there's something built in there where if they deal more than 20 points of damage on a single attack, they can choose to half that damage and instead deal the other half to the armor itself, causing a plate of armor to fall off. Once that plate of armor falls off, that means that the AC of the fire giant comes down, maybe by 1 or 2 points, 18 down to 16, or even just 18 down to 17. The point being that as the players deal heavy damage, they're actually making the likelihood of them dealing more damage in the future higher, and so it starts to escalate and snowball towards a conclusion. These mechanics make combat run faster, but they also give the whole battle a sense of escalation. The players are gradually aware that they're doing more damage each round than they were back at the start of the combat, and there's this sense that everything is picking up speed, rushing towards that final conclusion. Of course, doing this will make your monsters easier to kill, but you can kind of rebalance that simply by making them hit harder, perhaps giving them additional attacks, giving them a slightly higher AC that can perhaps come down over time, or just running monsters which are several CR levels above the player's level. A simple way to make combat feel a bit faster is to introduce a time-sensitive victory condition. Now, the basic victory condition for most combat encounters is monster dies and players don't die, and there's no inherent time limit in that. So if one of the players wants to spend their turn running away, healing up, and then coming back into the fray next turn, they can do that. There's no sense that they have to risk it all to deal max damage now. But what if time is running out? What if the party's favourite NPC has been poisoned and the antidote is in a small vial on the villain's person, so they're going to have to defeat the villain, get that antidote, run over to their NPC in the corner and revive them before the NPC perishes. Or maybe the players are fighting a necromancer, and the necromancer has used a dark ritual to summon a huge swarm of zombies from a nearby graveyard. The zombie swarm is on its way to where the players are fighting the necromancer, perhaps at the top of a nearby hill, but it will be a while before they get up the slope of the hill to overwhelm the players. So the players know that if they can defeat that necromancer in time, the zombies will lose their magic and crumble to the ground as corpses. But if they fail to do so, if they hang around and they don't attack the necromancer head on, those zombies will arrive and overwhelm them with superior numbers. You can also put a major quest reward on the other side of a time-sensitive battle. For example, let's say the players are fighting a red dragon in a castle atop an active volcano, and on the other side of that dragon is that huge gold hoard that they're trying to get to line their pockets, but there's an eruption coming. So if they don't defeat the dragon in time, that eruption is going to flood the castle with lava, and the gold is going to become inaccessible. So they might win, and they might defeat the dragon, but they won't get the reward. The time limit doesn't actually have to be a set number of rounds, although it can be. But you can just be telling your players that something is coming. The floor is rumbling, some of the floor falls away, and they see gold spilling down into the lava below. They might think that you're counting down to round 10 when it all kicks off, but you might not have any specific round number in your head. You're just giving them this sense of escalation, and the players are coming to realize that every turn counts. They have to make the most of the time they have, take down the dragon as fast as possible, and get to that gold. Every fight in D&D doesn't have to end with the monster dying. They can surrender or run away. Players usually get a sense close to the end that they're winning, that the tides have turned, and that victory is now almost a certainty. But the thing is, the monster can feel that too. Intelligent enemies, from low-level bandits to powerful liches, probably have a sense that the players are bound by more moral laws than they are, And if that's not the case with your players, this doesn't apply to you. But in those cases, that villain might look at the players and think, my best chance is to surrender now and try to escape later. And they might make a very compelling argument for themselves to say that they're giving up and surrendering to the players. The players are then given a bit of a moral quandary. Do we kill this person in cold blood, or do we take them back to civilization to, face the authorities, perhaps be tried for their crimes? And if they do that, that journey back to civilization is a perfect time for the villain to try and escape. If the enemy doesn't have the intelligence or just the inclination to surrender, then running away is also a good option. They live to fight another day. If you think this is going to be a possibility, have a look at your map in advance and work out roughly what route they'll take if and when they decide to flee. Remember that whatever entrance the players use to get into the monster's lair or into the battle map will probably be very inaccessible to the monster. To get past the players to that exit point, they'll probably have to take a lot of attacks of opportunity. So having perhaps a backup plan, maybe a back door to the building the players are in, a gap in the ceiling through which the dragon can fly, will be a great help later on. The players might be a bit annoyed that they weren't able to finish the job this time, but there will be something very satisfying about seeing a once proud dragon turn tail and flee from them. And it also sets up quite a satisfying grudge match in the future, with players swearing that the next time they corner this monster, they're going to finish the job. I'm sure not all of these tips will be useful at every table for every GM and every player, but I'm hoping that one or two of them will have sparked ideas that you can take away and that will help you to make your combat run a little bit smoother, a little bit faster, keep that energy up, and make sure that that big battle at the end of your campaign lives up to the hype that was building throughout all the games that preceded it. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you to everyone who likes, subscribes, supports me here on YouTube, and to those who support me on Patreon and allow me to do this as my full-time job for some reason, which is crazy. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.